Hello and hi everyone. This video is a continuation to the second part of the subtopic under implied terms. We shall continue to the next point of the implied term. Next, it is implied conditions that goods must be reasonably fit for the purposes for which buyer wants them. According to section 16, subsection 1, it states that there is no implied warranty or condition as to quality or fitness for any particular purpose of goods supplied under a contract of sale. This basic rule here is that the buyer must be aware and to exercise care in making purchases because the law in section 16 does not protect the buyer. Section 16, subsection 1 adopts the common law principle of caveat emptor. The meaning of this caveat emptor is let the buyer beware. The buyer must make sure the goods he buys are of the quality he wants or that the goods fits the particular purpose that he wants. If he does not do so, he must bear the consequences as section 16, subsection 1 does not protect the buyer. However, under the section 16, subsection 1, subsection A, in cases where the buyer makes known expressly or impliedly to the seller the particular purpose for which the goods are required, so as to show that the buyer relies on the seller's skill or judgment and the goods are of a description which it is in the course of the seller's business to supply, whether as a manufacturer or producer or not, there is the implied condition that the goods shall be reasonably fit for such purpose. Accordingly, there are 4 conditions spelled out in section 16, subsection 1, subsection A. First, the buyer must make known expressly or impliedly to the seller at or before the time when the contract is made the particular purpose for which the goods are required. Next, the buyer is relying on the seller's skill or judgment. Number 3, the goods are of a description which it is in the course of the seller's business to supply and reasonably fit for its purpose. Lastly, if the goods are specific, they must not be bought under their patents or trade name because there will be no implied condition as to its fitness for any particular purpose. Let us look into details of those conditions, shall we? First, buyer makes known to seller the particular purpose of the goods or disclosure of purpose of the goods. Where the goods have only one particular purpose, there is no requirement to indicate the purpose it is for. Good bought for its normal purpose, for example, in prior and loss, when the buyer poured hot water into a thermos flask, it exploded and injured the buyer. The normal purpose of the thermos flask is to keep the hot water. Therefore, when it exploded, there is a breach of its implied condition, that is, it showed that the flask was not reasonably fit for its normal purpose, that is, to hold hot water. As compared to the case of Griffith and Peter Conway Limited, where in this case, a woman bought a tweed coat without disclosing that she had unusually sensitive skin. She sued, but the court held that there was no breach of implied condition as to the fitness of purpose of the coat because she had not made known to the seller of her sensitive skin. The coat would not harm a normal person. Next, the buyer is relying on the seller's skill and judgment. So, it is necessary to show that the buyer relied on the seller's skill and judgment expressly or impliedly. In the case of Grant and Australian knitting mills, The court laid the principle that it was necessary to show that there was reliance on the seller's skill and judgment, and that the reliance can be inferred from the fact that a buyer goes to the shop in the confidence that the seller has selected the goods with skill and judgment. The court held that reliance usually arises by implication from the circumstances. So what happened in this case was the plaintiff suffered from a severe dermatitis after wearing underpants brought from the retailer John Martin & Co. Apart from suing the retailer, he also sued the defendant, who was the manufacturer, alleging that they had been negligent in failing to take reasonable care in the preparation of the garments. The garments in question contained excessive sulfites, which caused dermatitis to the buyer. Another case to illustrate the point is Camel Laird and Company and Manganese, Bronze and Brass Company Limited. The contractor entered into a contract to manufacture a propeller for a vessel in accordance with a number of specifications. However, one element unspecified, that was the thickness of the blades. The propellers were found to produce noise above the level permitted for the vessel to receive the classification sought by the owner. So in this case, the court found that the contractor had breached the implied condition that the propeller would be fit for the intended purpose of obtaining the specified classification because the thickness of the blades had been left to the skill and judgment of the contractor. Next, there is a condition as to the goods supplied are the description which it is in the course of the seller's business to supply. This means the seller is in that kind of trade or business. We may refer to the case of Ashington Piggeries Limited and Christopher Hill Limited. A seller of animal foods was asked and supplied mink food even though seller had never previously supplied such kind of foods. Court held that it is no defense for an animal food seller to argue that he had not previously supplied such brand because making and selling animal feed is in the course of the seller's business. As long as the seller dealt with the goods of that particular kind, it does not matter that he had not dealt in goods of the contract description, that is, the mink food. Last but not least, the goods were not bought under particular pattern or trade name. If a buyer asks for specific goods under a pattern or trade name with the impression that he is not relying on the seller's skill or judgment, then he cannot later complain if the goods bought are not fit for the purpose for which he requires them. But if the buyer buys under trade name and relies on the seller to select a suitable item, an implied condition arises that the buyer is relying on the seller's skill or judgment. In the case of Baldry and Marshall, the buyer had asked the dealer or seller for a car suitable for touring, and the dealer recommended Bugatti car. Buyer later found out that the car was not suitable for touring. The court held that the said dealer is liable because buyer had relied on the dealer's judgment to select a suitable car for his purpose. We will cover the remaining implied terms in the next video. Till then,